Hi guys, Carrie Ann from the Science Booth. Now, you know me, any excuse to eat one of our science experiments or activities, and then I am all in. Have you ever noticed that the moon seems to change shape every night? In fact, if you looked at the moon every night for 28 nights, you'd see the moon go through its whole lunar cycle. Now, the moon doesn't make its own light, it's not luminous like the sun. We can only see it because the light from the sun bounces off the moon and towards our eyes. It's a bit like a giant mirror, a beautiful giant mirror. So what we're thinking about is how the position of the Earth, the sun and the moon help us see the different phases of the moon. So just like the Earth, one half of the moon will be bathed in sunlight at any one time and the other half of the moon is in shadow. And as the moon goes round the Earth, we get different views of the sunny and the shadowy sides. Sometimes the entire sunny side is facing towards us, and that's when we see a full moon. And sometimes we can only see a part of the sunny side, and these views are called the phases of the moon. Now, I think it's really cool to try and demonstrate this using my favourite biscuit. My favourite biscuit, as you can see, are Oreos. Now, you don't have to use Oreos. There's plenty of sort of cream-filled biscuit, but I'd recommend a circular biscuit with some sort of creamy filling. I think Oreos are the perfect biscuit because they're dark, a bit like the sky, and then the moon on the inside is the cream filling. Now, my top tip is to maybe put your Oreo biscuits into the fridge for about, I don't know, at least an hour, but maybe overnight is even better. And the good thing is, as scientists, we often make mistakes, but at least these mistakes this time are edible. So I would recommend having your Oreo cookie and either, I don't know, a lolly stick or a butter knife. You can already see I've got some of the frosting or the creamy centre on here. Now, the hardest part of this activity is trying to get your Oreo cookies with an intact filling. So if you just twist them slightly, I'm sure you've done this before. That one, I wouldn't be able to use, so I'll have to eat that one. Let's have another go. I'm going to twist these apart. Ah, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Now, that would be awesome for our full moon. Okay, but if you want to make it into one of the other phases, then you have to cut off some of the frosting. Okay, so we'll have a go at making one of the quarters. So I'm gonna just squash that in half, and I'm gonna take half of it off. Okay, now there's two ways you can do this. Try and take that off without making too much mess. You could either use that as one of your quarters, or what I think works kind of better if you want to take a photograph of it at the end is if you turn your Oreo cookie back the other way around on the half that doesn't have much of the cream on, you can pop that on and you can pop the frosting back on. So you've got two options. You can either do it like that and try and keep the frosting intact. That's quite difficult, but it gives you a more sort of dramatic effect, or you can just slice it off and leave it like that. Now, obviously, to save time, I've made some earlier. So we'll just get rid of that for now. And I'm going to take you through the main sort of phases of the moon. And I think we will start with a full moon. Now, this is just to say that the phases of the moon that we're looking at is how the moon would look from the Earth if you were in the Northern Hemisphere, okay, at different times. Now, the Northern Hemisphere is the top half of the planet if we are north of the equator. If you are in the UK, you are north of the equator. If you're in a different country, you might want to check whether you're north or south of the equator, okay? So I think we'll start with what we would call a new moon, okay? And actually, a new moon, you wouldn't be able to see very much at all, okay? You can sometimes see a little sliver around the edges. Now, when you start to see a little crescent moon just appearing, we call this a waxing crescent. So we use the term waxing if it's starting to appear. So there we have our waxing crescent. Next, it looks like a half moon. Okay, we actually call this the first quarter. That is our first quarter. And at this point now, we're going to start to see more and more of the moon. And because more of the moon is appearing, we call it waxing again. So this is a waxing gibbous. A waxing gibbous. Our next one, possibly my favourite, is a full moon. We've got a full moon. And after this point, this is when the moon starts to slowly disappear. So instead of using the word waxing, we start to use the word waning, but you'll recognise some of the terms that we're going to be saying again. Okay, so this one looks a bit like this one. Okay, so again, it's a gibbous moon, but because it's starting to fade away from our point of view, we would call this one a waning gibbous. Waning gibbous. Down to the bottom, we've got the opposite of our quarter above. So we had the first quarter at the top. We've now got the third quarter. And last but not least, we've got a waning crescent. A waning crescent. And that looks absolutely amazing. Now, what I would do if I was you is I would 100% take a photograph of it. Okay, but I was also enjoy eating it afterwards. And you can also try and keep a lunar diary for 28 evenings. So if you go out and sketch what the moon looks like, I'll pop a little worksheet in that. That worksheet can be found on the website. It can also be found in the subscription box this month. Okay. But the best thing about this experiment is you get to eat some of your mistakes and leftovers. Look at that. And guys, I probably only messed up one or two of these. So, I mean, to do this experiment successfully, you need 8 biscuits or 8 cookies. However, I'd maybe get a packet or 2 to account for any mistakes. I really hope you enjoy making your phases of the moon and then eating your phases of the moon. And please let me see your photographs over on social media. Thanks very much, guys.